All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Here we're looking at Week 12 in college football. Pretty wild week. Playoff picture is thinning up as the weeks wind down. Looking at number one Georgia and Ohio State, they both beat their respective opponent 56-7. Georgia played Charleston Southern, so that's self-explanatory. Ohio State was over the 7th-ranked Spartans. Complete beatdown in Columbus. They scored on every single drive in the first half. All 7 drives went for long touchdowns. C.J. Stroud, 432 yards, 6 touchdowns. We knew they had a big advantage, but against this dead last ranked Michigan State secondary and pass defense. But man, this was just brutal. 32 of 35, 432. Oh man, I picked C.J. Stroud to win the Heisman, so I'm excited for him. They had their top 3 receivers all went for 100+ yards. It was just a complete beatdown. Their defense also played extraordinarily well. When Michigan State can't run the ball, they can't throw the ball either, and that was incredibly evident in this game. Ohio State, they're playing with a lot of energy on the defensive side of the ball. The defensive line was incredibly active. Kenneth Walker, only 6 carries for 25 yards. They were down so fast, they couldn't even get anything going. They had one drive. They were down 14-0, and they had a drive where they went downfield and they missed a field goal. Other than that, that was about it. They had the touchdown in the fourth quarter, but I turned the game off at halftime. It was over. It was a complete beatdown. Michigan State absolutely could get nothing going on either side of the ball. Ohio State let off the gas in the second half, of course, but they could have put up 100 points if they wanted to. They could not be slowed down. So the Buckeyes, they're now in the driver's seat for the playoff officially. Alabama, they had some issues with Arkansas. C.J. Stroud out of that elite performance. Bryce Young said, "Hold my beer." He went off. He carried the Tide. 559 yards. That's an Alabama record. 5 touchdowns, 31 of 40 throwing the ball. Ryan Robinson had a solid day on the ground, 122 yards. The Bama defense, though, continues to be a big storyline. They weren't, statistically, they did a pretty good job against the run. I think in the first half, Arkansas, they had some pretty solid runs. As the game went on, that really got shored up, but they could not contain the pass. 326 yards, 3 touchdowns. Nobody could hang with Treylon Burks. He had 179, 2 scores on 8 grabs. Not even Josh Jobe could hang with him. The pass defense, positioning, continues to be an issue. I think they've gotten much better against the run, and overall, I guess you could say they did in this game. Even though early in that first half, they had the Razorbacks had some solid runs that gave them first downs, but they could not slow down this Arkansas passing attack. They got outscored in the fourth quarter, 14-8. Remember against Tennessee, they had the same issue, but they pulled away in that game immensely. It's just a big struggle right now for the Tide. Nick Saban acknowledged it. He said that's something they're going to continue to work on. And, of course, I got Georgia now. They locked their place in the SEC title game. So we'll see how they play the remainder of the year as they look to punch a ticket to the playoffs. They got Auburn next week. And then, of course, the Bulldogs. And if they win that, they'll be in the title game, or the playoffs, that is. It's gonna be tough, though, to bank on this defense to make plays. I think the offense is good enough to carry them, especially with Jamison Williams and John Mechie. Bryce Young has progressed tremendously as the season has winded down. So I think the offense can carry them to victories, but I think you need to show up your defense. They're too talented to be getting beat like this week after week. The Utes, they knocked out the Ducks from playoff consideration with ease. This was just a complete beatdown, 38-7. Coming in this game, I picked Oregon because I figured they would control the line of scrimmage. They were not able to do that at all. They didn't even make an attempt to run the ball. It's not like they were getting dominated in the first quarter. I mean, they kind of were, but there was no reason to not run the ball. They shied away from it completely. 23 carries. Travis Dye only had 6 attempts. Anthony Brown, 17 of 35 passing. He had some good throws down the seam, but they couldn't control the line of scrimmage on either side. 208 rushing for the Utes. Tavion Thomas had 3 scores. They were down 21-0 right before that punt to end the half. Britton Covey took it 78 yards, and that pretty much put a dagger in the Ducks' chances of winning this game. They came out and scored on their first drive of the first half, or the second half, that is. And that was about it. No momentum really came from that. Their defense got drove on right after that once again. They just could not slow down the Utes, especially on third down. That's where Oregon makes their monies on third down. They were 6 of 14. The Utes were 11 of 14. It's usually the other way around. That's where the Ducks usually shine. Utah, complete dominant performance. They dominated time of possession, made fewer mistakes than the Ducks did. If Oregon wins next week, then these two will rematch in Vegas for the Pac-12 title game. So That should be interesting. It's something to watch. Still a Rose Bowl berth on the line for the Pac-12 teams, but they're going to be sitting out of the playoffs this year. Number 5, Cincinnati. Perfect day. They couldn't have had a better day with how they played and with Oregon losing 48-14 over SMU. SMU scored twice in the fourth quarter, but other than that, it was a complete shutout pretty much. Tanner Mordecai, 66 yards passing. Coming in this game, I remember last year when Cincinnati would do this to high-powered offenses, including SMU last year. They absolutely blew them out. So I wasn't that shocked to see this. I kind of figured their defense it's really that good. People, can say what they want about playing in the group of 5. This defense is legit. Luke Fickell is a phenomenal defensive coach. These guys are loaded with talent. I knew that they had a big advantage against SMU secondary too. Desmond Ridder, first drive of the game, they went downfield. Tyler Scott had a big play. Trey Tucker, the speedster, they got him involved. The biggest playmakers they had took advantage of this bad secondary. 274 yards passing for Ridder. 3 touchdowns. He ran for a 40-yard score. He also caught a touchdown, too. He was doing everything. He scored 3 different ways, 5 total touchdowns for him. Just a complete beatdown for the Bearcats. They held SMU to under 200 yards and only 14 points. These guys average 42 points per game. They're top 10 in yards per game. This is a very impressive. If the committee says they don't play anybody, well, they just played somebody and absolutely smacked them in the mouth. So if they were not at least number 4 come Tuesday, that's just going to be ridiculous. So big win for the Bearcats. Michigan, they also blew out Maryland 59-18. That's impressive. They hung 59 on the Terrapins. They're 10-1 as they now prepare for Ohio State in a playoff eliminator. 352 yards passing for the Wolverines. Also ran for $151. Blake Corum did not play, keeping him healthy. I don't know if he'll play next week. I'd say, yeah. I'd say missing 2 weeks. It's kind of encouraging that he would play. Hassan Haskins had another solid game, 2 scores, 80 yards. Michigan smokes the Terrapins. Notre Dame did the same thing. The Georgia Tech, 55-0. That's pretty impressive to do that to the Yellow Jackets here late in the season. No, the Yellow Jackets haven't been very good this year, but 55-0. That's pretty nice. This Notre Dame team's progressed immensely on all sides of the ball as the years went on. They're on the outside looking in on the playoffs. I think, right now they rank ahead of Oklahoma State, but if the Pokes, they win the next 2 weeks, they would most definitely jump Notre Dame. The Cowboys, they shut out Texas Tech in their own right, 23-0. That was highly impressive. This is an offense averaging 33 points per game. It's a bowl team. They just could not do anything at all. 9 for 29, the starting quarterback threw Donovan Smith against the Cowboys passing. They could not move the ball whatsoever. It was 10 of 32 total. They have 2 different guys get in there. Held them to 25 yards of rushing, only 10 first downs. This was just a complete beatdown. 108 total yards for Tech. That is just insane that Oklahoma State did this on the road in a potential trap game. Offense held back a little bit. They didn't play a great game. Tay Martin had a solid afternoon. Got a handful of different guys running the ball here. That's probably the most impressive performance of the weekend was this defense from the Cowboys. They continue to be elite. They will host Oklahoma next week. Their spot's already solidified in the Big 12 title game, but they're still fighting for a playoff berth in my eyes. If they can beat Oklahoma, then they would rematch with Baylor if the Bears win next week for the crown. So a lot to play for the Pokes. Clemson, they demolished Wake Forest. I remember last week I picked NC State to beat Wake Forest because the game plan was to run the ball, control clock, let your defense do some work. They didn't do that. They ran the ball like 18 times. Clemson listened to the game plan. They knew what it was. They had 54 carries for 333 yards and 4 touchdowns. 48 points is by far the most they've scored this year on a Power 5 opponent. Sam Hartman had 312 yards. They're going to put up their numbers and whatnot. That's just what Wake Forest does. They couldn't run the ball at all. 36 yards on 31 carries. Because I figured they had a nice advantage in the back end because the Clemson secondary has struggled a good bit, but I also felt like the defensive line, they've been getting back to their roots with Tyler Davis coming back over the last couple weeks, and they would disrupt a good bit. And they did that. They completely stonewalled the run, made it hard for Sam, this passing attack, to establish a real rhythm. So Clemson was a complete beatdown. They pulled away with this one. 33 minutes was the time of possession, the 26 for Wake. So they didn't exactly dominate time of possession, but that's a very, very good number. They ran the ball very much. I seen a Twitter post where they didn't throw many, if any, passes in the second half. I don't know how many they did. It wasn't many, though. They just kept giving it to Kobe Pace, Will Shipley, and they did work as the Wake Forest Demon Deacons are now officially out of the playoff race, and they still control their destiny for the ACC title game. They play at Boston College next week. If they lose that game, Clemson's in. If they win, then they are in. So Baylor, they went on the road to Manhattan, had no issues with the Wildcats, even with Gary Bohannon going down. Ben Chapin, the backup, he came in and played very well. He had some very nice runs. Had 44 yards running, 137 yards on 16 of 21 passing. He was very good for them because they only scored 3 points in the second half, but he helped them control time of possession. He helped them control field position. And this great defense did its work. Deuce Vaughn, he had 128 yards and 11 carries. They really didn't run the ball a lot. I don't really know why. It seemed like he was really working. Granted, Deuce Vaughn had 65 yards for a touchdown on his second quarter carry. That's where a big bulk of it came from. But they should have ran the ball more. That's really their bread and butter. Skylar Thompson had a rough afternoon. This Baylor defense was just phenomenal. 20-10 was the final there. The Bears, I just mentioned, they will be playing for. They got to win, and they need Oklahoma to lose, and they will be playing for the Big 12 crown. So they do not control their own destiny, but this is a team that's potentially playing for a New Year's Six Bowl. So we'll have to play for the Bears. Ole Miss had little issues, 31-17 with Vanderbilt. Matt Corral, 326 yards in his final home game as he announced he's going to the draft. Iowa State and Oklahoma. BYU, they trailed at the half to Georgia Southern. I think they trailed at the half. Either way, they shut the Eagles out on the road in the second half, and they won that game with ease. Jaron Hall had 300+. Tyler Allegiant had a couple scores. Wisconsin, they really found their offense, but Nebraska loses another game by one score. 3-8. All 8 losses have come by one score this year. Braylon Allen had 228 and 3 touchdowns. They completely stonewalled the Nebraska running game. As you expected, they're the top-ranked run defense. They rank higher than Georgia, who's right behind them at number 2. They're just that good against the run. Adrian Martinez had 350 yards passing, though. Austin Allen had a big day. The Badger offense, though, they were able to get going, and because usually when teams like Wisconsin, they have a great defense that starts to give up some big plays like they did in this game, and yardage and points. It's usually bad news for them, but their offense finally was able to do something. They've been getting much better as the years went on, so let's not be overhyped about it because they actually have been getting better as the weeks go on. But this is a good Nebraska defense, and that was very impressive for them to, total almost 400 yards, half of it coming on the ground. 28-21, Sooners. This defense played extraordinarily well the entire game. Late in that fourth quarter, they really had some issues, though, especially against the tight ends. Charlie Kolar specifically had 152 yards on 12 grabs. They couldn't contain these guys. All around, though, they held Breece Hall in check. 1.5 yards per carry for the Cyclones. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown right before the second half ended. They forced 3 turnovers, double-digit tackles for loss, 6 or 7 sacks. They had 4 forced fumbles. They were dominating Iowa State. Iowa State had 38 minutes of possession time. Their defense played just as well. They held Oklahoma to 1-10 on third downs, only 15 third downs. Under 100 yards passing for Caleb Williams. Kennedy Brooks had some nice runs. This is overall a defensive affair. We kind of anticipated it would be. I really wasn't sure what to expect from either of the units. Oklahoma, their defense played phenomenal. Offense is still struggling, though. Back-to-back weeks where they just looked unimpressive. They now play one of the nation's top defenses on the road next week against the Pokes. So Oklahoma, their playoff hopes are very thin, but with one loss, they are still kind of alive. Still very thin, but they just picked up a nice win at home against Iowa State. Texas A&M beat Prairie View A&M 52-3. Iowa survived Illinois 33-23. Petros was back. I don't know why he's starting. I'm not a big fan. Pittsburgh outlasted Virginia in an offensive clash, 48-38. Brennan Armstrong, 500 total yards. Kenny Pickett, though, 340 and 4 touchdowns. He was able to get the job done. Jordan Addison, 202 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 14 grabs. He's phenomenal. I don't think he gets enough respect. He's one of the nation's top pass catchers, and I don't think a lot of people know about him. So, big-time effort there from the Panthers, who I'm pretty sure they're now going to the ACC title game, or if not, they'll clinch it next week. Pretty sure it's locked up, though. I don't know if they're playing next week, but I'd probably pick them to win. So, NC State, 41-17 against Syracuse. The last few weeks, Syracuse has really kind of fallen off the wagon, that is. They got blown out last week by Louisville. They were playing a tough first half with the Wolfpack, and then eventually, just kind of The offense for the Wolfpack took over. They were able to win that game. Syracuse played a lot of close games early on in the year. Last few weeks, it's not been very pretty. UTSA, they remain undefeated on a last-second touchdown. They get past UAB 34-31. They're now going to be playing for the CUSA title. Pretty sure they're going to rematch with Western Kentucky. The first time those two played, they both put up like, I don't know, was it 90 or 100 points total. Something like that. Very high scoring. It's going to be a fun matchup. Then rounding out the top 25, Mississippi State down to Tennessee State. Some other notables, Texas, they lost yet again. They're 6th in a row on the road to West Virginia. Penn State shut out Rutgers 28-0. Florida State, they're now going to be fighting for bowl eligibility next week against Florida. I'm pretty sure they host them in that game. They beat Boston College on the road. And then Colorado, they beat Washington. And Florida also, they're both fighting for bowl eligibility, I'm pretty sure, next week. Missouri beat the Gators on a 2-point conversion in overtime. So that's going to wrap everything up for Week 12, guys. A very big week, college football. That's going to be everything for today. There are going to be some other notables on the screen, so make sure you check those out. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.